Welcome to Inform New Hampshire. My name is Dean. This is Richie to my right, my co-host, and we have a guest today, Pat Murphy. He's been on before. We're going to go over some things from the last show that Pat was on, just to recap, and then go into some new information regarding the Trump revolution. We are broadcasting on Monday evening, 6:30 p.m. It's Thursday mornings, and Friday and Saturday and Sunday mornings on Channel 23 Manchester Cable Television. We also have a YouTube channel, which is called Inform New Hampshire. We'd love it if you go by there, check out our shows, like us, and subscribe if you will. We also have a Facebook channel, same name, Inform New Hampshire. If you want to contact us, you can use the email at the bottom of your screen, or you can locate us on Facebook. How's that? So we believe that the country's in great peril. We're concerned about the things that are not being reported in the mainstream media. So what we do is we bring you information, news and information that you won't hear in the mainstream media. In fact, most of it's forbidden for them to even talk about. So we've covered things about the Constitution. For instance, the CAFRs, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Reports, not allowed to talk about on mainstream media. Isn't that interesting? All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Richie. He's going to cover some things about Gerry DeLemus, good friend of ours, still a political prisoner, being held out in Nevada. And then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
All right, yeah, I did want to ask people if they wanted to contribute to Gerry's legal aid fund. He's arrested. He's been detained since, I'm trying to think if it was January or February. I think it's 5 months now anyway, going into the 6th month. And there's no relief in sight. I don't even know what the man's been charged with, but it's all bogus. And if you care to contribute, go to freegerrydelemus.com, and the spelling of his name is Jerrydelemus. I would also like to ask, because this was just brought to my attention 2 days ago, and I watched a documentary. It's called William Cooper's Interview at CNN, uncut version. And I watched this and I was amazed that this man knew what he knew and how accurate he was as to what is going on. Now, he was in Navy intelligence and whatnot. And then I went on to further watch how he was killed. And it was that part of it, you can leave questioning or not, but the government accused him of being in the militia. And I just wanted to say that the militia is mentioned in the Constitution 4 times. It's absolutely, positively, 100% legal to be in a militia. Okay, our government, we the people told the government that in the Constitution. So it's there. There's no question. I don't care if the guy was in the militia or not. He was murdered by the government. The other thing I wanted to say is if you would please watch that. It's William Cooper Interview, CNN, on YouTube. And please, share it. You're going to be amazed at this information, and the people that are clueless out there. I know most of the people who watch this show are not clueless, but you need to share it with people. Because this man risked his life. Matter of fact, he did lose his life, trying to share information to help us.
To help wake people up.
To let it go to waste is a sin for all of us.
When you search it, look at the uncut version is what you want to look at.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason that we bring Pat Murphy here on, because of his historical perspective. He knows so much about history, and he's trying to tell you also that if you don't watch what happened back then, you're going to make those same mistakes now, and they are being made. We need to wake up. You don't see it in the streets yet, but you will soon. And when it happens, it's too late. It's too late. We need to do something now. So I'm asking you to watch this video. William Cooper, please watch it and share it with people. And with that, Pat wants to continue on what he left off with, finishing that up. And then he's going to continue on with Mr. Trump.
Pat Murphy, welcome back.
Turn it over to Pat.
Hey, nice to be here.
Good man, Pat. Good man.
I'm going to spank Brian Williams for a couple of minutes. It should be fun.
Get him, Pat.
Should spank them all after what went on last week with this week with the Democratic National Convention and the emails and the press media meeting with their masters. It's just really something. I do want to say something first, and that is should please support our local police at this time where we've had such a loss of life and so many of our good policemen and women injured throughout the nation. If you can, a word of encouragement to them, or a word of appreciation, a word of thanks, or something to back them up, because they're under horrific stress and pressure right now. It's something that shouldn't exist in our country. It's really, really out of control. It needs to be stopped. So getting back to where we were, the last time that I spoke, it was a little bit on it was on cultural Marxism. It was on the press. It was on Obama's apology at Hiroshima, and then Brian Williams mentioning the United States dropped atomic weapons in anger, et cetera, out of anger. And I wanted to say that somebody like Brian Williams, who does a grave injustice to the people in this nation, to our soldiers that fought in that war, and to any of the people that lived underneath that particular system. Imagine if the Philippine Islands or Dutch Borneo or any of those people that lived underneath that occupation, if they had B-29 superfortresses and they had atomic weapons, what the status of Japan would be today. 4 islands would be underwater bomb craters. The United States showed a lot of restraint in what they did, and this media that's really revealed itself lately. You can see that it's constantly engaged in this hate America thing, and it is a form of cultural Marxism. Whether they understand it or not, they're engaged in twisting and distorting the history of the nation. Let's talk a little bit about Mr. Trump.
Mr. Donald Trump.
Mr. Donald Trump, and what we
It's
see
fascinating
is
to watch what's happening, isn't it?
It is fascinating, and I think it's probably long overdue. And I don't know if you call it a revolution. I would tend to call it a counter-revolution. For this reason, this country's been through a revolution for decades. All of the different institutions have been under assault. The family, the history of the nation, the economy,
education.
Certainly the rule of law. We're watching the abject lawlessness of high officials in this nation right now, and we all know that without the rule of law, there is no predictability. So there's been a revolution against the country long before I was born, but it seemed to accelerate in the '60s, and now it's taken off at warp speed. And it seems like Donald Trump, being the type of individual that he is, I think he's riding the crest of a wave where people are starting to realize the horrific corruption of the system, of both parties, and the political theatrics and pantomime that we watch all of the time. Right. And he seems to be a great alternative, and some people would think this is probably the last best chance that we have to have somebody that can really do something for the nation, to bring it back to...
But if I could say something, Pat, I agree with you 100%, but I don't think Trump is going to do anything unless we, the people, get behind him. Because if we don't get behind him, I don't think the job is too big for one man, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to get behind him and to further support what you say about the corruption. That's why Jerry DeLemus, for you people in New Hampshire, that's why Jerry DeLemus is sitting in a jail cell in Nevada, because of the corruption. That's why Lavoy Finicum was murdered in cold blood with his hands up by our government. That's why Bill Cooper, who I consider all these people patriots, and I mean that in the strictest sense of the word, was murdered and accused of being in a militia by the government. Is it he deserves to die because he was in a militia? That's your only recourse? I mean, this is crazy stuff.
Well, I think that you make a good point, but I would also assert that people are behind Trump right now. He's garnered the largest movement ever done by a president.
I don't mean rah, though, Dean. What I mean is to physically get out there and start rousting the corruption in our government. It's up to us. This is our government.
No, you're right.
We have to get out there and physically help them.
I agree.
It's either that or we're all going down, because I like what Trump has to say, but I just don't believe any one person could do it. I could be wrong about that. I'm not a know-it-all.
Oh, I agree with you.
Why are they so scared of him? Why are they all attacking him constantly?
Well, they don't want him in there.
Right.
It's obvious they don't want him in there.
Because they know he could do damage to their game.
Well, he's threatening the ruling class, which you have in this nation, which a lot of people don't want to admit that you have. You do have a ruling class. If you take the 10 wealthiest counties in the United States, 7 of them are right outside of Washington, right outside of Washington D.C. And then if you look at this,
that's where I grew up.
If you look at all of these people in the media, think back to what the media has done, and the distortions and the untruths, and particularly being caught recently. I think back to David Brinkley when he retired, and he said, "I never had my own opinion in my whole career." So the second that I came out with it, you would have been gone. You would have been gone instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a problem.
That's the sin of omission right there. It's probably the biggest sin of the media of all.
And the people that try to rectify things, they look at certain people, what I call conservative gatekeepers, and you have to be so careful. And we mentioned this in one of the programs here about Bill Buckley not being a conservative, but yet making himself look like he was a conservative, and then taking on the armor of being the arch conservative of all time. Or you take,
Mark
for instance, Mark Levin. Now, here's a guy that you're going to have a debate with him, and Tom Woods challenged him to a debate. And you call a rectory to get an exorcist first before you would sit down with the guy. So here he is. He's a constitutionalist, and he's for limited government, free speech, the Second Amendment, and in there for a long time, and massaging you, and I'm your friend, and I'm on your side philosophically in every way. And then we need an Article 5 convention. Why? They don't obey the law now. Are you kidding me? Which we would never control. So you see a whole bevy of these.
Yep. But
But the best one that we saw was recently at the Republican convention, where Grandpa Munster came out, and I thought we'd have Eddie the Bat Boy would be right behind him, but he didn't show up. And he showed Cruz showed his true colors on what he was, that they have gone to that extent to craft somebody so smooth, so sophisticated, they can speak before the Supreme Court on multiple issues, and he gets to the point where either he's going to be the guy or he would sick her on us.
And tear down
And
the
you get to
party
see-
in the process.
You get to see what would happen. I mean, what these guys are truly like, that there's a level of sophistication that the average person, they just don't get. You have to
Right.
really understand how all of it works. I saw the same thing recently, going back, not quite a year ago. There was a woman that produced a book called American Betrayal, Diana West. It's one of the best books I've ever read. And it's on the history of the United States from the 30s on. And it deals with the Roosevelt administration. That, of course, through your schools and publications and all of that, here's a guy that took us out of the Depression and all of this stuff. But she deals with the pollution of the American government from 1933 on, and the penetration of radical communists into all phases of this. And the book is it is a phenomenal book. And then you watch so-called conservative gatekeepers come in on top of her and attack her like rabid dogs. And it was you say, this is just unbelievable. But that's a book that I would recommend for anybody, especially on the Roosevelts, if
What's
you
the
deal
name
with
of
them.
it again?
It's American Betrayal by Diana West, or you could pull it up on YouTube. And if you have a problem with eyesight, or you only get the audio, then you can pull it up on YouTube and listen to her. And the thing that you're struck with when you look at that individual is that she seems like a profoundly decent human being, and is motivated by her father having fought in the Second World War and things like that. But it's a colossal story of the Roosevelt administration extending its hand to Joseph Stalin in 1933. After the Soviet Union has just killed anywhere between 6 and 10 million Ukrainians. It's 24,000 deaths a day every day for a year, 17 people a second when you think about it. And then the fact that somebody like Roosevelt would refer to him as Uncle Joe, almost as though he was your buddy. And I can expound on the Roosevelts. I don't know if we're not really here to do that right now, but I can think of a couple of great stories that you're not going to see in any of the movies or films produced lately on the Roosevelts. I noticed something else here too. You watch the Democratic convention, and you look at a lot of these young kids that thought Sanders was going to be the guy, and you look at the amount of upset and ill feelings and almost a frenzy that
Emotion, yeah.
and the emotion that they have gone into. And I thought about that. I look at Sanders, and we had discussed democratic centralism when we were looking at the history of the Soviet Union and revolutionary movements, and how they would discuss things and things would seem to be going a certain way, but then once it's decided, they would all go into lockstep. And a lot of these people, it's because they're cut off from their history, that they really just don't understand how these things work. Those people had what I would call a Kronstadt moment. And what that is if you look at I always go back to that particular movement, the Russian Revolution, because it's such an ocean of information. The backbone of that Revolutionary Army was the Russian naval fleet, who had a base on an island in the Gulf of Finland. And it was referred to as the Kronstadt fleet. They were a backbone of that army, of that military. And if you look at them, they had the blue and white horizontal stripes, which Russian special forces have today. By 1921, they had had enough of the Bolsheviks, and they turned on them when they looked at the huge police state that was built. And because it was the winter time, they were in those ships on the ice, and ultimately Trotsky would launch an invasion against them, and that held out for about 10 days. But that was a moment when suddenly people that were involved in that whole revolutionary movement, and the key players, realized that we've launched something, and we're surrounded by something that we never anticipated. And we refer to that as a Kronstadt moment. Well, these kids have had one now. They've taken a look at, they looked at somebody like Sanders, and they said, look what this guy did at the last moment here. We just can't get over that. Well, it's all a part of it.
It's all by design, right?
They don't have the historical knowledge and the background they should have coming out of these institutions. They just young college kids, and you would think at that point, by the time that you're accepted into one of those institutions, you have some degree of knowledge on major historical events. That certainly should be one of them. You know, we watch all of these episodes here where you're watching attacks on churches and on Christianity, and you watch that in this country, and it's a very, very big issue. And I would think that when I look at it, my assumption was that the reason you see so much of that being done is that there's a whole movement towards eroding any awareness of the Christian faith, but in particular the doctrine of natural law, because that's basically what we have on our side more than anything, as a protection, the idea that your rights come from a source, other than the government that exists prior to that actually is the creative force.
Right.
So once you've eliminated all of your traditional Judeo Christianity, you don't have any more rights, and everything seems to be going. It seems to be going in that direction. Are we getting pushback now? I think we're getting a lot of pushback now. It seems like. What do you guys feel about that?
I don't know if there's enough, but I agree with you. There is some pushback. I mean, it looks like, well, at least some force out there is trying to bring the Muslim faith, or Islam, whatever they call it, into the world, all over the world, not just the Middle East, but all over the world.
Well, you watch
That's
that.
the world religion.
You watch that in France today, where they decapitated a Catholic priest during a mass, which is horrific. And I don't think there is enough knowledge on that. It's 1,400 years of history, and it's not being taught. And look at how the media's treatment of that whole phenomena is similar to, say, like Diana West had with the treatment of the Soviets coming into American government in the 30s, and our State Department being individuals that really knew what had gone on in Russia and what was happening, where they were pushed out, where Maxim Litvinov, their ambassador, talked to FDR and said, can't you do something and give us somebody that we can work with? And what you find is a whole purging of individuals that were really savvy to Lenin and Trotsky and Zinoviev and everything that had gone on were simply pushed out. Right?
Yeah.
And you had a great library that existed in documents that was taken apart and pushed from one end of the Library of Congress to another. You find the same thing with Islamic phenomenon, that you're not really learning the 1,400-year history of this so-called religion.
The priest that was beheaded wasn't me, so why should I care? That's the attitude. That's the attitude of the people. Wait until it is you. Then you can worry about it. Right?
Well,
it's too late then.
You're living in a society where they're developing a culture of fear. It's much like I could think of one Russian author dealing with the Soviet Union and referring to the individual within Russia as he who was afraid. You take a look at all the different issues that we've looked at in this country for the last few years, and years ago when we were kids, you'd see bumper stickers against this candidate and that candidate. You don't see a lot of them, because what you're seeing is there is a culture of fear being built that something's going to come down on you for taking that particular stand.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But it's all about education and objective education, and it needs to start at an early age. And as far as the schools go, something has to be done. I think probably at home, early on. As I've said in the past, you have to educate the educators, because just the fact, just watching the Sanders camp, just watching these kids and thinking that, you're going to be able to get anything you want, the government's going to provide for things. We're in a nation that already financially is straitjacketed. There's no real economic education there. It's not a realistic appraisal of the situation that we're in right now.
Well, they're not schools anymore. They're indoctrination environments.
Well,
That's the politically correct word, I guess.
Well, yeah. If you look at anything that's going on with like the Common Core and education in general, it's frightening stuff. I think one of the key things on that with the Common Core is an element of what you'd call anti-selection, where if you, as the individual parent, have an objection to something, that it's recorded centrally in Washington, D.C. So now what happens is, years later, maybe a child has gone through the whole system and done well. It's time to apply for a loan or grant money, and suddenly you find out that you're on a list. It's a Soviet system. And what's understood within a family back then, usually the female, usually the mother working on the father, keep your head low, don't say anything, go along with the system, let's go along to get along. So, and I don't think a lot of people really realize that it operates like that.
It does. It's exactly what my wife did for 7 years. Yeah.
Well, what they're doing now, too, in New Hampshire, and the people in New Hampshire should hear this, they're trying to bring in these casinos in New Hampshire. They've tried, and they're going to keep trying until they're here. The problem that I have with the casinos is twofold. Number one, it's a great profit maker for the state. Okay? So the people in the government are going to profit by it. But your children who are looking for careers, they're going to be cocktail waitresses and cashiers. And they might be lucky enough to be a maid. I don't know. Really high potential jobs for your children to get into. Keep the damn casinos out of the state. Let Las Vegas and these other Massachusetts have them. Let's bring high-tech jobs into New Hampshire and start bringing up the educational values for kids and stuff like that. I mean, it's so crazy what we're doing to our children. It really is. Indoctrinating them in schools, and we don't do anything about it. We just sit back and let it happen time and time and time again, like we're dummies. And I mean literally dumb mannequins, dummies. We have to step up to the plate and start taking control of our government and letting them know that you work for us. Do the right job as defined in the Constitution or wherever, or else.
The big positive I see with Trump, getting back onto the Trump message, is that he's taking on globalism, as he says.
Yeah, he is.
Which is, I've never seen anybody take that position before.
Except Kennedy, but that was more covert.
Yeah, you would have to define globalism. If you had to, you'd probably say that it's a worldwide colonization using Marxist tactics, which is what's going on.
I call it something different, Pat. International organized crime.
Well, it is. Just
syndicate. That's what it is.
There's no question. You can go back to years ago when I was a kid and Barry Goldwater ran, and he wrote a book later called With No Apologies. He talked about meeting these power brokers, people from all over the world, and he said, listen, they're not communists, they're not socialists, they're not fascists, they're not anarchists. The only thing they believe in is the bottom line, and they'll shift and they'll change and they'll do whatever they have to do to protect their own interests. And they'll support different political systems against each other. And it seems that Trump has got a good handle on that. And
I think he's always been wise to that.
He's taken it on. He's learning as he goes. But he is a gutsy individual, a lot of backbone. I thought his speech was a pretty good speech for somebody that's just stepped into the political fray. I mean, then you can look at Cruz, and he's polished and sophisticated. But you know what? If you're not for the average guy, if you're not for the country and its original inception, you can talk about it all that you want, but just watching that behavior is what you have to be careful of. They're out there, so they can criticize Donald Trump for being a little rough on this, a little rough on that. You know what? I think the vast majority of people trust him. They really do, and I think he's going to do well.
Clearly, based on the results, they do.
I think so. I think so.
So I think that I noticed that after after his speech, his numbers shot up even higher, even though mainstream media was just trashing him. Like, they were just really trash. If you saw the clips on CNN, they were just tearing him apart.
What do they say? Any press is good press?
No, no, they were just, if they could have, they would have hogtied him. I mean, they were just, they were going after him. But his numbers shot up after that. Just
I think
because
the
people-
mainstream media was almost in the bucket, and they're almost gone. They're almost in the flush module right now. But after what we see coming out of the Democratic National Convention with the email leak, where major newspapers and press media are reporting to the Democratic National Committee on whether something is okay to publish, the angle it should take is just, in Russia they called that socialist realism. Everything was run through one organization, initially with a guy named Maxim Gorky. So you can publish this, you can publish that, let's take this angle, let's take that angle, and everything was totally manipulated. So why anybody would even put one of those stations on, to me now, it's just a reason just to turn them right off, or to dispense with purchasing one of those newspapers that truly have shown themselves to be not working in our favor or interests, or being any bit objective whatsoever or honest at all. They're in a tank for them, and like you say, it is criminal. It borders on a criminal, every bit of it.
Well, it doesn't border on it. It is.
It is. It is.
Organized crime
Yeah.
at its finest.
Well, we're close to running out of time here, but is there anything you want to add to the end? Got like 2.5 minutes.
I'll say something first and be quiet. I would really like everybody not only to watch but to share William Cooper interview, CNN. It's really important. I mean, when you see what this man says, and he's right on the money about everything. If you don't believe it, you can check it out yourself. Contact us if we still have our email account. I think we lost it, but we'll check on that. And share it. Please share it. America is, if we go down the toilet, the rest of the world's going with us, people. They're looking up to us. I have people in Facebook all over the world, and they're looking up to us. So I'm asking Americans, please, get together. Start finding out what's wrong. Don't sit there and say, well, I'm making 6 figures. Everything's fine. Everything isn't fine. Because it'll be in short order when you won't be making 6 figures and everything's fine.
That's it.
Quick shout out to the Granite State 3%ers, New Hampshire 3%ers, New Hampshire Real 3%ers, and various groups that last weekend, 2 weeks ago, as well as this last Saturday, went out to support the police forces in Manchester during the Black Lives Matter march. Probably would suffice to say that the purpose for being there was security, protection of the community, as well as the protection of those who, from the Black Lives Matter marches, their right to protest and march is certainly one of the things that we, the people, would want to protect. It's the provocateurs who infiltrate and start trouble that we would want to protect those people against. And so great job, Iggy, Stevie D, and all you others, Michelle. Thanks for being out there. Great job. Very professional. I'd just like to say that the police were very kind and appreciative of us being there. It was really cool.
You had some good policemen in the city of Manchester, there's no
Yeah, we did.
question. No
Really
question.
impressed.
You had some of the best. Let me say one more thing about Donald Trump.
Yep.
They think he's aggressive or he's a little bit abrasive at times. Truth is defiant. When it runs into deceit, it's almost like a battle, and you're seeing that defiance. You see that energy come out of him. And to me, I think it's a positive that we have somebody that has some moxie, as they used to say.
It's fantastic.
You mean sound like an American?
An American, yeah. Thank you so much for watching us. We'll see you next week.
Thank
Have a
you,
good day.
and